Today, on behalf of UC Berkeley, we welcome you all to an interactive session with Acharya Prashant. Acharya Ji is a Vedanta exegete,
philosopher and social reformer,
columnist, and national best-selling author.
Democracy has been the best system known to us. Now, limitations of the system are being ruthlessly exposed. Places where people are not educated are the places where democracy becomes its own annihilator. If these people can vote for me only if they are uneducated, then as a policy maker, I would deliberately keep them uneducated.
We are honored to welcome Acharya Prashant Ji.
Talking about global conflicts recently with multiple wars all across the globe on the news every day, and sometimes can feel very anxiety inducing, but oftentimes it's a cause of human factors. So we want to ask you, what human factors do you think have led to this unrest in global peace?
See, it has mostly to do with the rise of right-wingism across the world. Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, and several other budding minor conflicts. If you look at them, some of them might not even be international in nature. But if you look at them, they are centrally related to the rise in right-wing attitudes. Now, where is that coming from? That is coming from a few places. I'll try to enumerate them. The first is that the democratic model probably itself is flawed. It is not populations that start a war, no? You cannot say Russians invaded Ukrainians. That didn't happen. It is the ruler, the man at the center, that starts the war, mostly for his own personal ambitions and based on his personal ideologies. What's remarkable is that this man at the center, and that's what we are seeing across the world today, is mostly a product of the democratic process itself, or at least a semi-democratic process, at least a pseudo-democratic process. Even in Russia, you won't officially call it a dictatorship, right? And that's happening in the US as well. The democratic process believes that people, just as they are capable of taking wise and sane decisions. Now, this principle, this assumption, is obviously better than allowing some random person to assume authority, and that's why democracy has been, in a relative sense, the best system known to us, especially since World War II. But now, 80 years since the war, the limitations of the system, its fault lines, are being ruthlessly exposed. You are talking about people casting their free vote. But people, are they free, first of all, in the inner sense? If they can be tempted, manipulated, excited, are they free? If if someone can come and incite you with racist ideas or communal doctrines, how free really are you? But democracy says no. The person is the sovereign decision-making unit, and we'll respect that. So I call that as fallacy of respect number one. Number one. There is another place that the liberal democratic system respects too much. We'll come to that. Yes, obviously, there has to be universal adult franchisee, and people should have the right to vote. But then a lot must be invested in education. Places where people are not well educated are the places where democracy becomes its own annihilator. Tyrants come to occupy the throne using almost perfectly legitimate democratic means. So there is not much really that you can even complain about. The fellow will say, I am a democratically elected leader. So along with democracy, what should have been mandated? Just as we say universal adult franchise, similarly we should have said compulsory and universal education till adulthood. For democracy to succeed and for these insane wars to stop, you need educated populations. And then it comes to the matter of how to define education. Because our centers are determined by material profit and numerical success. Therefore, the highest kind of respect that we give to education is to vocational and professional education. Science, technology, as you have there, STEM. Now, these do very little in terms of educating a young person about her own interiors. How does the mind function? How has man traveled through history? There is so much to be learned from history. But a typical MBA grad is unlikely to know much of world history or psychology or philosophy or sociology or anthropology. Even though in the education market, in the job market, this person is going to command the highest price, you will say, what a well-educated person this one is. BTech MBA. Now, you can be a BTech MBA or whatever, or a doctor or this or that. But if you have not gone through education of the self, then you are extremely vulnerable to psychological manipulation. Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, at Berkeley, it's a public school, so those optional courses we're talking about before, people aren't always really required to take them. And although every engineering major has to take an ethics course, I've noticed a lot of students, like my peers, don't really care about them. But even if I feel like I can take the time to understand and learn history, and understand ethics, a democracy is a body of people.
Yes.
And it feels very isolating to be the only one who cares and who feels like they understand. How do you get the people around you, get your whole body to systematically change if
Right.
you're just one person?
Wonderful. So just as democracy is a system, similarly, the education that needs to necessarily accompany democracy has to be systemic. You cannot say everybody will vote, but education is as per your own sweet will. Education has to be something that the state takes care of. And every single person must be educated right till the age of 25 at least. At least. We have come to a point where with AI and stuff and increased longevity of life, we don't really have to start working necessarily at 21. You need to start working at 21 if you were to live only till 60. Or if you were to become a victim to many kinds of diseases and morbidities at 60. Today you remain healthy till 80. Today medical science has found ways to keep you not only alive, but fully functioning for a longer time. So you can devote 25 or 30 years of your prime to education, and you must. And you must. Why not? And that has to be, we said, a system. Otherwise, you are very right. You would feel like an island. Well, I am concerned about all these things, but others are taking a very emotional and a very instinctive and reactive view of everything and coming up with very superficial arguments, but because these crowds are in large numbers, so they prevail in a democratic system. So we are at this peculiar point in history where democracy will need to correct itself. It is offering, we said, too much respect to human discretion. It is assuming that man, as he is born, a human being, just by birth, is capable of exercising discretion. That is not really the case. We are not respecting the facts if we believe in this thing. The second thing that the liberal democratic system is respecting too much is faith. Faith, which is nothing but a belief system. You see, if I come to you and I say I believe in a flat earth, you would smirk, you would mock, you might laugh at me, and if you're kind-hearted, you might want to educate me, right? But if I come to you and say, I believe in a flat earth because that's what my religious book says, then you would leave me alone. And you'd say, it's a matter of faith, and I respect all faiths. No, this is nonsensical. If we are free to denounce, contradict, bring down all kinds of irrationalities and superstitions and illogics, why have we continued to be so respectful of this thing called blind faith? And people just get away with anything. It's my personal belief system. I don't want to argue on it. I don't want to argue on it. I believe that land belongs to me. I don't want to argue on it. Now that would start a war, right? I believe that that particular land belongs to me. And don't argue with me because this is my holy belief system. My holy Lord appeared in my dream and commanded me to invade that land. Argue with that. And since decades, we have been educated to retreat in the face of such nonsense. Somebody does a mathematical equation wrong. You would not hesitate in correcting that person, right? But somebody comes up and says, I believe the earth was made in 4 days by 4 holy angels. You would not argue. Why not? Why not? No, this is my holy belief. I understand why this value system arose in the first place. It was so that we can stay clear of conflict. This person believes in one thing, citing it as holy or religious. That person believes in another thing, citing it again as holy or religious. So we said, let both of them maintain their beliefs in their personal private space, and we are not going to argue with them. But it's no more in the personal private space. All kinds of bigotry and name any problem of the modern world, and it is arising from a belief system. It is arising from an unscientific and illogical view of the world and oneself. And those who have reason and logic on their side, they very respectfully retreat when faced with an unreasonable kind of animal. Why this respect? No, we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. It's not about feelings, it's about facts. Facts must always prevail over feelings. What is this dictum about not hurting anybody's feelings? And if you don't want your feelings to be hurt, then you must keep your feelings very secured in your personal space. You must not expose them. I'm not going to enter your house or your heart to hurt your feelings. But if you come up with your feelings in the public space, and you even want votes over your feelings, then allow me to hurt your feelings. But that's not happening. Are you getting it?
Yes, I think all of us can understand, the dynamic that we're speaking about, and how there is always, kind of a we keep facts and we keep feelings on one scale, and it really you just really need to find a balance between facts and feelings. You cannot let one take over the other, otherwise you won't be able to think as a
I'll serve be a little more ruthless than that. You cannot have facts and feelings balanced against each other, otherwise you lose out on the fact. So the fact is that the earth is an oblate spheroid, and the feeling is that the earth is a flat plate. How do you balance these two? And what kind of special geography do you get from that? Think of it. How do you balance these two? One of them has to prevail. There can be no accommodation in this. No?
I guess I have a question.
Yes.
About different, a lot of different religions have different facts. And there's a lot of facts that we don't know, we don't have the answers to yet. So how do we say that some facts are more true over others? And is there not value in, just believing that we won't have all the answers? Or is it something that we should try to find? We should try find all the answers to these facts.
Lovely question. You see, if I don't have the answer to something, for example, physics still does not know for sure what dark matter is. And that's a big unknown, because dark matter constitutes 85% of the weight of the universe. So that's a humongous unknown. But that does not mean that you come up with a fancy tale saying dark matter is some great monster that was created 4,500 years back by this particular demonic force and these such things. If I don't know, I simply say, I don't know. And I'm researching into it. And I don't know when I'll get the answers. But coming up with stories and labeling them against facts just cannot be entertained. And this is something that you see, it starts at the level of the family itself. It starts at the level of your most basic relationship. No? Don't you see how in our most intimate relationships, feelings manage to get a weightage that they simply don't deserve? And the results are never good. Results are never good. The feeling has to be aligned with the fact. I'm not talking of becoming unfeeling automatons. No. But the feeling has to be aligned with the fact. And then feeling itself attains a bit of sacredness when the feeling is aligned with the fact. But if your feeling is rather aligned with your ego and imaginations, then how does one respect such a feeling? But the world is yes, please.
Yeah, another thing I was gonna ask about this is sometimes we declare things fact because someone in power declares it, like eugenics, for example. When in America, when the white people were in power and they declared eugenics was truth. How do the people who, don't have the opportunity to speak voice their feelings? And because in that way, they don't have the facts to say eugenics is not true. They only have their personal experiences.
You see, facts by definition are falsifiable. You do not accept something as a fact just because somebody in authority proclaimed it to be. That's not the process by which somebody attains the status of a fact. A fact by definition is falsifiable, verifiable. There are peer reviews. Einstein came up with his relativity theory, and there was this huge book published against him. 100 authors against Einstein. And he came up with a really smart one. He said, if I were false, even one would have been enough. Why 100? Even one would have sufficed. Why 100? And that's the thing with facts. If a fact is proven to be untrue even once, it loses its status. And it is publicly available to be tested and denied. You can test it, you can deny it. It is always in the public domain. The acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second square. Now, this is not a holy commandment. You and I can verify it on our own, and then it becomes a fact. And then there are theories that are not yet in the realm of facts. It is just a theory. It looks like a good theory. This is a theory that is yielding verifiable results. But still it is a theory because there still are gaps. So science is, I suppose, pretty honest about things. And just because things are commonly accepted, they just don't attain the status of facts. I feel about this thing, I feel about that thing. Why do you feel so much? Go and read up. Instead of feeling so much, why not visit a library? An e-library available right on your phone.
I think what I was trying to get to is that now, having said that, the reality of our world is that facts usually come from power. It should probably not be that way. Facts should be, as you said, available in the public domain, up for discussion, debate, and perhaps even falsification. But in today's world, facts always come from a position of power. We are so conditioned to looking at things in monetary terms. That we believe that the one with higher monetary funds would perhaps be able to get a better judgment of the world is all about. But just onto that, I was trying to get to the question of it seems as though the most non-virtuous people, at least in the eyes of us commoners.
May I first of all address the first part of your statement? See, facts that come from power are called propaganda. That's not a fact. And if you believe in a so-called fact just because it is coming from power, then it is belief. There is propaganda coming from authority, and there is gullible belief on behalf of the receiver. Nowhere is something called fact in the picture. Huh? Why must I believe in something just because some big name is behind it? Some big name proclaims there is nothing called climate change, it's a hoax. Somebody comes up and says, population decline is happening. Why can't you check up the numbers? Is it really happening? And it's a very verifiable number. I mean, you're just counting heads. There can be no possible discrepancy in it unless there is a very organized kind of manipulation.
Yeah.
So authority is in no way a touchstone for something being a fact. Right? And there is no need, and that's the reason why we need to be educated in history and psychology and philosophy. We need to see how entire nations for centuries could be successfully manipulated into believing in stuff that was totally fantastical, eyewash. Once you see that, you realize the vulnerability of the human mind to propaganda.
Right.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So this just stimulated me even further. And I was wondering, humans usually have this tendency of not being able to accept uncertainty. We always want everything secured. We always want something that, we know that 10 years down the line, I'll be in this job working at this company with this particular X amount of salary, right? And we always look for answers. I mean, even in our personal context, when we don't know something, as students, we either try to go to our textbooks. In our personal lives, we try to go to beliefs. And often, when facts are not proven, they are not verified or falsified, we just tend to blindly believe them, just so that we can get some form of certainty. Especially that's in my case. If I don't know whether something can be verified or not, I'll take it up from my parents. I'll take it up from the people around me. Because I need something to believe in. I need something to be certain. So, how do you recommend people to not be afraid of this uncertainty, to embrace the uncertainty, and to realize that not everything is black and white? There is a color spectrum that we need to look at when we are looking at different opinions and ideas.
It should be quite easy. Should be very easy, no? Yes, of course, I agree. When we do not know of things, we turn to figures of authority, right? They could be parents or teachers or people around us, sometimes even friends, colleagues. So my question is, name the most wicked creature in the world. And I turn to these people for my answer. And these are all cats. And I find that unanimously they agree that the answer is rat. I mean, shouldn't that ring some bells here? And then I ask these people, there's another set, and they say cats. And I observe that these are all dogs. Shouldn't that tell me that the answers in no way are reliable? You turn to your parents, the answer points at one direction. You turn to a career counselor, the answer is pointing in another direction. Don't you know that the answer is coming from their own center of self-interest? Should be easy to see. Yeah. So while it is true that one will ask people around, and there is no harm in seeking advice, in letting information come to you from all sides, but one must also see that the fellow providing the information is going to be biased. And that's why there is going to be a huge degree of subjectivity. And what is good for that person who's counseling you need not necessarily be the right thing for you, because he is coming from his own center of self-interest, which will generally not coincide with the point where your interests lie.
Totally, yes. Yeah, I think it's really important to understand the context, as you were mentioning, of where we are getting our facts from. Otherwise, the validity of those facts cannot hold in the first place.
Where is that person coming from? Sometimes it's possible that the person is uttering just the right thing, but still you have to ask him, from where are you coming? For example, you are in no mood to go out tomorrow, right? But your girlfriend is insisting, and she says, no, such fine weather and sunny days now, and we must venture out. And so you look up the weather report. And the weather report says there is a fair probability of turbulence tomorrow, and it might even rain, and there might be a blizzard or something.
Yes.
And fine. And then she comes up with another report that says that the meteorological department has been off the mark exactly 37% of times. Now, the fact she is quoting is absolutely right, but you have to see where she's coming from. She's coming from a point of self-interest. She is not quoting the fact for the sake of the fact. She is quoting the fact so that she can elicit a particular favorable personal response from you that coincides with her own desires. So it's not as if people fool us just by hiding the real thing, just by hiding facts. Sometimes people fool us by quoting facts. Even when somebody is quoting facts, you have to ask, what is his motivation in quoting this particular number or whatever? And for that, you don't need a degree. You need to be attentive. You need to observe. You need not be swayed by the authority of the person in front of you. You have to ask, okay, fine. This is where he is coming from. Can I dispassionately, very, very neutrally look at him? Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really great piece of advice for all of us here. And we also had in mind, in today's world, we see the most non-virtuous people, at least in the eyes of us laymen, that become the most successful. And we always feel as though the people at the helm are the ones that are wicked, perhaps. So, and or at least they do not have a strong inclination towards faith. And we were wondering what your response is to when we always keep on preaching about the fact that we should follow faith, but sometimes people feel as though faith never takes them to success. Again, there can be different interpretations of success in this context, but we were just wanting to know, why is it that we see the most non-virtuous people at the helm of success in today's world?
You see, they are there not by the virtue of anything special or extraordinary that they have, right?
Okay. Yes.
If you take a very slimy kind of liquid, thick and slimy, no, and you put a speck of dust in it, or you can even take the speck of dust and place it right at the bottom of that fluid. What would the fluid do to it? It would throw it up right to the top position, because it is slime and it loves to put dirt on its head. The person that you see at the helm of the affairs is a personal representation of an aggregate consciousness. If you find that person to be non-virtuous or wicked, it is because people in general are non-virtuous and wicked. So that's the person they chose for the top job. There's nothing that special that person has done. In fact, if you can get a bigger crook, he would unsettle this man at the top. There is nothing honorable there. There is nothing to be learned from that person. You cannot go to that person and ask him, Please share your great secret with us. How did you come to occupy this high throne? He didn't come to occupy it. He was placed there by forces beyond his control. He might think that he's a smart man and he fought an election or did something great, and then he manipulated the audience and this and that, and then therefore he obtained the popular vote and got there. But that's not happening. In the kind of system that we have, democracy, that person there is representative of how the electorate is. And if the electorate continues to be confused, confounded, ignorant, bigoted, then these people will continue to sit atop. So there is no need to idolize them. There is no need to take it to heart. There is no need to feel demotivated or depressed on seeing such people at the top. In fact, if they are at the top, in some peculiar way, it is the greatest insult that could be shot at them. Assume we here have some kind of a counter Mensa. You know of Mensa, right? That hallowed group of people with high IQs.
Yes.
Let's say this set of my friends sitting over here are a unique group of people with low IQs, let's say. And they all elect me as their supreme leader. Is that a compliment or the biggest humiliation that I could face?
It is, isn't it?
So why should you be then jealous of me, or why should you then think, oh my God, this person, in spite of being non-virtuous, has attained such great heights? Do your own thing. I suppose it was Albert Camus who said that this world is so screwed up that just being truthful to yourself is an act of great rebellion. These are not the exact words. You can look up for the exact thing. There is nothing in these people full of pomp, pelf, power. Nothing. There is no way you should be ascribing any respect to them. You need not go and throw a shoe at them. That's not needed. But inside, here, you should be free of any respect to them. And when it comes to throwing a shoe, if you get such a chance, that too is fine.
Yeah, I had a question because oftentimes it's easy to feel disassociated from these people in power and say that, they didn't get there rightfully. But at the end of the day, sometimes these people in power have such a weight over, your life, the people, like society's life, if they're people in power, and it feels demoralizing to feel hopeless that the people in power are not going to be representative or do justice to what we do. So how do we, how as an individual can I make an impact to put people in power and get everyone else to put people in power that represent us?
Create a little domain, a circle, a field of your own. Untouched, uninfluenced, uncorrupted. Obviously, they are lording over entire countries and continents. And practically, we know we cannot go out and fight them. That's fine. But still, we can have our own little private islands of serenity and sacredness, no? And we should not allow anybody to enter those places. Those should be our private temples. Small places involving just the right kind of people for the right purpose. And then as you grow in your inner rootedness, you might find that circle widening. And if we can have enough number of such circles, each of them gradually widening, one day they'll all come close and coalesce into a big upsurge of real virtue. But you cannot start with the aim of something tectonic. Let there be a great earthquake and let me bring all these structures of authority down. You cannot start with that. You need not start with that. Start with your little thing. 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, and keep widening, and know that it's human nature to strive for freedom, for purity, for sacredness. So you would not be alone in this. Unknown to you, some other place, somebody else is doing the same thing. And if your circles keep expanding, one day the two circles will come into contact. And then something great will result.
Yeah, that's a really relatable statement for me because, for example, I'm very passionate about like climate justice and climate change. And, UC Berkeley is said to be one of the very environmentally friendly universities. But since coming here, I feel like a lot of my peers actually don't really care. And you talk a lot about climate justice and climate change. And I was wondering, this idea that like I have this idea that, climate change is my issue. And as an individual, I have to do a lot for it. And that it's also sometimes disheartening, especially because you see a lot of like big corporations doing most of the impact for climate change. But I know you talk a lot about how climate change is like human consciousness related. And I was wondering if you can elaborate on how our inner void and compulsive consumption are linked to environmental destruction and how we can also manage that as purely individuals that have such a much smaller impact on environmental degradation.
See, it's very simple. It can be explained even to a kid, and I do that. So we are upset within. We are not okay within. We are unfulfilled and we do not know why. Because we are not educated, not trained to have an inward focus in life. We don't look at ourselves. We don't reflect at our thoughts, actions, feelings. So we remain upset, unsettled within. And when we are that way, then we want to go out and do things. Yeah? Let's go somewhere. Let's eat out there. Let's fly to that place. Let me buy new stuff. Why can't I have a private jet? Why can't I fly to my job daily? So when you do things outside, it's obvious it requires energy. And it so happens that the more uprooted you are inside, the more is the number of unending things that you compulsively want to do on the outside. I'm not at rest, I'm not at peace. So sometimes I go and pick that up. Sometimes I go and, try putting that chair over there. Sometimes I run upstairs, drop something there. Oh, what if I could have a badminton court in the adjacent lawns? So I'll cut down, uproot all the trees and have a cemented court there. And I'll do all these things. And I'm doing these things because I'm not all right within. Just that doing all these things requires energy. Energy. And a thing of coincidence is that most of the planet's energy today comes from fossil fuels. Fossil fuels. So when you go out and do things, you release carbon. It's as simple as that. Now, going out and doing things is not really the problem, because if you're doing something for the right end, it usually has an end point as well. But when you do not know what you're doing, then you do it endlessly, like corporate profits. Go and ask somebody in the board of a corporate, do you have an end point? This is how your P&L and balance sheet looks. Is there ever going to be a point where you would say enough is enough, it's saturated, and we are not proceeding any further? We don't require at least an ever increasing number against my profits. Even a stable level of profits would do. Go and ask them. Not a single person, not a single CEO, not a single stakeholder is going to say there is a definite end point. They'll say we require it to increase every year. Now, for it to increase every year, you'll have to consume energy. You'll have to dig out stuff from below the surface of the earth. You'll have to burn things. And you'll have to brainwash your consumers into believing that the products of your company are needed for them to have a sustainable or respectable life. You'll destroy everything. You'll destroy your employees as well. Because since you have no upper limit to your profit, so you'll want to extract the maximum from your employees, offering the minimum you can to them. You would exploit the earth, you would exploit your employees, and obviously you will exploit your customers. And all that is climate change. When you extract stuff from the earth, that requires energy, that releases carbon dioxide and methane. When you brainwash your customers, they purchase not just your useless products. They get identified as being purchasers and consumers. So they keep on purchasing everything, not just your stuff. Not just your stuff. And when you purchase, then somebody manufactures. For somebody to manufacture something, again, what is needed is energy. So climate change is nothing but a product of the unfulfilled dark interiors of this species, Homo sapiens. No other species is born with this kind of unrest within. No other species is responsible for the climate disaster. We are. Why? Because only the human being has a hollow in her heart. A hollow that she keeps trying to plug in using all kinds of material things. A new haircut, a new pair of shoes, a new husband, a new job, this, that, and all of that is energy. I'm not feeling well. Your feelings are carbon. Because in feelings, as we said, there are no facts. You do not know what the facts of your insides are. All you have is feelings, and feelings are blind. To feel so much is to experience so much without understanding anything. When you feel something, do you ever understand it? You feel you have a headache, right? That doesn't mean that you understand how the brain works and why it is aching. So we feel a lot, but we are not at all in touch with facts. And this feeling, given the kind of respect we give to feelings, makes us run hither, thither, and all that is carbon emission. There can be no scientific, no economic, no political, no technological solution to the climate disaster, not at all, because this is purely a spiritual crisis.
I agree that, overconsumption is one of the biggest problems for climate change and climate justice, but sometimes it's not even overconsumption, you're consuming the bare minimum. But like you were talking about, like technological advancements, how do we stop like our society from going stagnant? Because every innovation in every field now requires some sort of large carbon footprint? And is there a way to coexist with innovation, spirituality, and climate justice?
No, I do not see how innovation is out of tune with mitigating the climate disaster. Right now, what you call as innovation is nothing but a particular kind of innovation that would further the capitalist objective. We don't just innovate, we innovate only in particular directions. Directions that would enable us to have more profit. So we are not having real innovation, mind you. We only innovate where there would be an ROI on the innovation. So it's not as if innovation goes necessarily hand in hand with consumption. That's the kind of innovation we are seeing, but that's not the rule. This idea that unless there are more profits and these things, we would not progress. Are we even testing this idea? You see, man does not exist for the sake of financial growth. Instead, financial growth is for the sake of the human being, right? True. Do we realize, first of all, what we truly want? Now, obviously, to an extent, money is important in that. But isn't there a point beyond which the returns start diminishing? If you live in a third world country with very little financial resources, then obviously having money would contribute to your welfare. We all agree, right? You'd get better nourishment, you'd probably get a roof over your head, your students would get better schooling, your kids, that is, all that would start happening. We understand. But a point comes when more money or more consumption does not contribute any more to your welfare. The curve starts flattening. Is that not so? And then there might be a point when the curve actually starts dipping. Negative marginal utility. So why do we continue to believe that unending growth in per capita income or per capita consumption is the sine qua non for human progress? That's not that way. It's an assumption that we need to challenge. Look at, there are several countries where the per capita income is very modest. Yet, the average life expectancy is better than some of the first world countries. Innovations are happening at the same rate or at a faster rate than the global north. Japan is known to have people who live the longest, no? Are Japanese richer than the Americans? No. In terms of per capita income, no. But they are more peaceful and happier. So is capital, money, financial growth needed for its own sake? Or is all economics actually for the sake of the individual? And do we understand what the individual really needs? We are not saying the individual needs mystical salvation. No, we are not coming from there. No spiritual mumbo jumbo here. We fully understand that we need money. But being rational people, we would also want to plot money against welfare and see where the curve attains saturation. And beyond that, if you're still invested in earning money, then you are wasting yourself, your life, and also destroying the planet. That's what is happening. That's what is climate change.
So I had an interesting point to add to this because the other day I was taking a class on human happiness here at Berkeley, and we were discussing how in the US there is the curve that you just described. For an average American, the curve sort of stagnates at $75,000 annually. Like that, after that, the diminishing effect of money, as you say, sort of proves out to be. And it's interesting how within that same class we were discussing how sure, wealth is a factor of human happiness, but the primary factor of humans being happy is human relations, connection, your connection with oneself and with others, and how fulfilled you are in those connections.
Wonderful.
And yeah, it was just something that I wanted to add.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, lovely, lovely. You see, is that something that the Forbes 500 chaps would want you to propagate? No, no, no. If you are happy in your relationship with yourself, and worthy people around you, would you find it necessary to go out and burn rupees or dollars so that you can have some piece of unconscious happiness? They'll not want you to know this, that money serves no purpose, rather negative purpose beyond a point. And just as, I'm glad you brought up this $75,000 figure, just as I'm hearing it for the first time, I'll look more into it, and it's very interesting. Just as you could come up with a figure beyond which the returns start diminishing, similarly, there is an established figure on the per capita material consumption that is sustainable for the planet. We also have very established, very scientifically proven figures on the per capita emissions that can be sustained by the planet. So all that is very well known. Just that the policymakers themselves are financed by the ones who want us to endlessly consume. And that's a problem with the democratic model. You see, I'm the top manipulator and I want these people to vote for me. So I leave them worse off psychologically than they ever were. I'll condition them. I'll indoctrinate them. I'll radicalize them. I'll leave them worse off. That's what democracy does to an ignorant voter. Please understand. If these people can vote for me only if they are uneducated, then as a policymaker, I would deliberately keep them uneducated if I want to come back to office. If these people will vote for me only when they are radicalized, I'll ensure I keep radicalizing them deliberately so that they keep voting for me. And that's a huge flaw in the democratic model. The entire world is experiencing it. We'll need to correct it.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask more on, as you brought up a really interesting point about how climate change is not, it's more spiritual than anything else that we know of, and how we are ourselves the contributor to climate change, consciously or unconsciously. I was wondering then, if that is the case, as you said, democracy has its own flaws. Who really is responsible for driving this spiritual change within folks? Is it us ourselves, or who exactly should we look up?
The culprit is the fellow who understands yet not acts. Yeah? The electorate, we said, is ignorant in general. The ones in power have vested interests in keeping the electorate ignorant. Then who can be termed as responsible for the state we are in? The ignorant person is as good as someone asleep. If somebody is sleeping, you don't go and blame them, right? They don't know anything at all anyway. Who is to be blamed then? The fellow who knows and yet not acts. He is the one to be blamed. And this is the person all real positive change will come from. The fellow who knows and acts. Unfortunately, we have too many people who do not know but act vigorously. And there is a great dearth of people who know. First of all, people who know, they themselves are a rarity. And even among this rare class, those who know and have the love, the guts, the responsibility to act, they are absolutely rare. Those are the people that will bring about change.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And honestly, like I feel like I try to be that person sometimes, but it's really difficult. I'll give an example. I live in the dorms and here, the water or whatever takes a long time to heat up. And sometimes I've seen my friends, turn on the shower, go and like do something else and come back so it's warm. And I was telling my dad about this, and I was like, yeah, like I don't really like how people do this. Um, and he's like, so you wait in the cold shower and you just deal with it because you don't want to waste water. And my dad tells me that, the way to get it, like you can't be the person taking all the burden and all the blame for climate change and dealing with it. Obviously, this is a very small example, it's just water, but like how does one person manage that burden and, even educate other people when oftentimes climate change is something that it's not an impeding issue for most people. It's not very urgent. So for many people, it doesn't feel like they have to do anything. And so for oftentimes people who do know and who do act, it feels like they're the only ones who do care and they can't get other people to care.
Wonderful thing to bring up. You see, we said climate change is the thing that emanates from the hollow within the human being's heart, right? So, this would suggest, and so has been my experience, that addressing climate change does not help. Because it is, you are addressing the emission. You're not addressing the source of emission. The source of emission is not really the exhaust tube of the automobile. It is the heart of the human being. That has to be addressed. And if you address that, let's say without even bringing in these two words in the discussion, climate change, you might still find that the fellow has become, in general, more sensitive towards the surroundings, her actions, her relationships, her entire being. See, that's the problem with climate activism. We want to behave as if climate change is an isolated problem. We do not want to, or we fail to see the clear, very strong relationship between human unfulfillment and the burgeoning emissions. It's not as if we have been especially unfulfilled only since the last 100 years or so, when the CO2 ppm started rising. We have always been like this, just that till around 1850 or 1870, we didn't have the technological means to burn so much fossil fuel or burn anything and reproduce so much and sustain such large populations. We didn't have the wherewithal. So just by virtue of our incapacity, the earth somehow managed to remain saved. But after the Industrial Revolution, we developed the might to do things on a never seen before industrial scale. We were always like that, Wherever we went, we brought destruction in our wake. It's not that we are destroying species, annihilating entire species just today. We have been doing that since centuries, just that the rate has exponentially grown. We went to Australia. What happened to the native species there? Both animals and human beings. We went to America. What happened to the natives there? Wherever we go with a sword and a torch. We are destroyers. We are destroyers because we are unhappy within, unfulfilled within, joyless and loveless within. If you address that in a person, you might find that the issue of climate has been taken care of without even bringing in the word. You never talk to that person about climate, and yet you find that the fellow has become more responsible. The fellow does not even know that his carbon footprint has shrunk, and yet it has. Whereas when you are on the side of activism, then you keep harping on this thing, you please manage your water consumption, and see, you must shut down these lights, use less of this, use less of that, and all that is just so boringly moral. Who would want to hear that? So be it the vegan activists or the climate activists or the plastic activists, they are abhorred. People run away looking at them because they are so predictable. And what is predictable becomes boring. Now she will come and pontificate on this and that. I've had enough of that. No, I don't want that. Why not speak to people about their life, about their love, about great literature, about the pressing issues in the world? Take them deeper into themselves. There is such fabulous literature available on the wisdom side. Why not have a club that discusses such literature? And a very silent byproduct of this thing will be that people will become more climate responsible. Very silent byproduct.